Hello, this is Mrs. Guthrie, and this is Unit 2, Lesson 11 in Computer Science Discoveries. And it is going to be all about styling elements with style sheets with CSS. So we have learned how to input images in Lesson 9, and today we're going to learn how to do some things that are going to make our websites really stand out and look even cooler. So there's some sample websites below. And we're just going to quickly click on them just to look at some of the new styles that we'll be learning. And I encourage you to take a little bit of time. I'm going to go through this part kind of quickly, but I encourage you to take a little bit of time to look at specifically what you see that they have done on the pages. And one thing I notice is there is the images, and they have like the rounded edges, they have a colorful border. There's text on the side rather than simply below. So it kind of gives it like it's more embedded into the page, which is kind of cool. And you can see a little bit more about how they do some of these things by looking in the style sheet. So I can see that we have put in some properties and values that are with my image tag. Still using the same curly brackets. Again, this is in the style sheet. So I'm going to move along and learn how to do some of these things. You can see some of the other stuff done in the other ones as well for zebroids and help save the bees. All right. In Bubble 2, we're actually going to learn how to do some things. But first, we're going to look through the web page that they're going to give us for some new styles. Open the style sheet, which is your CSS style sheet. And then what do you think is making this web page appear different? What makes the entire page blue? And actually, most of us learned how to do this with some of the stuff in lesson 6 and 7. Or lesson 6, we sort of explored how to make that background color a light blue by putting that in the body rule set. How are the images positioned to the left of all the other elements? So let's look down here at the images. I notice that it says float and there is left. So since they're going to the left, I'm going to assume that maybe that's the property that we're going to be looking at that helps our images float over to the left, which is kind of interesting. Alrighty, remember that you also have access to all these little helpful things up at the top. What does the body selector do? What does the border style property do? The border radius property do? What does the float property do? We're going to get into those in a second. You have all the help and tips that are in the helps and tips. So if you can't remember something from a previous lesson, you can look back at lists and HTML tags and headings and all those things. There's also the documentation that is very helpful as well. So there is so many things built in with code.org that can help you if you're having a hard time as we're progressing and getting more advanced. All right, so this is just a preview. There's nothing you have to do in this level, so we're going to click Finish and move on to Level 3. In Level 3, we're going to find the code in the style sheet that is making the background of the entire page light blue, and we're simply going to change the code to make the page a different color. And it says to try to change the background color of just the paragraphs. So let's try to do that. Remember that anytime we're adding color, all of that is in the style sheet. So we're going to go down to the style.css. And the first thing to do is to change this to a different color. I really like purple, so I think I will try light purple. That may not be a code, so I'll just put in purple. There is a medium purple, There we go. I like that. Okay, and it says change the background color of the paragraphs. Well, if that was my body element, I need to look down here and find my paragraph element. So we can do the same background color for our paragraph elements. Maybe we want them to pop with like a light color. Maybe that Alice blue, which looks almost white. Maybe we want it to color with some blanched almond. It's a nice color. And you can see that that colors everything within the paragraph tags, even the part that goes behind the images there. So interesting. All right, we have met the requirements of the to-do by adding in some colors over here and changing some things. Let's click finish and go to bubble 4. In bubble 4, it asks us to find the body rule set in the style sheet. And we want to play around with adding things like text align, color, or other text properties to the body rule set. So if you're working on this at home, you don't have a partner necessarily, so just make some of your own predictions. So if the body colored the whole entire background purple, what do you think it's going to do if I put in like text align and maybe write? Notice that it made all of the text, all of the headings, all of the paragraphs go to the right. If we add in color, now we're looking at the color of the text. Maybe I want to change that to dark blue. Interesting. And I'm not seeing that change. Maybe it, let's try that one more time. Color. Yeah, it didn't change that. That's very interesting. Usually it will change all of the things on that page, so I'm not sure why that's not doing so with this one. Quite interesting. Indeed. But you did see how the text align applies to the whole page. So let's see if there's any other properties that we might try. What about if we try font family and we try fantasy? Now, it is not, but I noticed that there is a font family added in everything except for images. So that may be part of why that's not working, because they've been given other instructions. All right. Again, look at all the helpful things you can look up and read about if you're wanting more information, or if you're still struggling with some things, you can't remember some stuff. A lot of this is from prior lessons, like what is a style sheet is from lesson 6. So if you've forgotten that, it's a good place to review. All right, let's go to bubble 5 and look at the float property inside the image rule set. And we talked about that just a little bit already, and we want to change the value from left to right. Now again, if it's a rule set, we're talking about a style sheet. So that's going to be in the style.css page. And we are going to go down here from left and float the images to the right. Very interesting there. Get rid of that. That looks really weird though, doesn't it? So it's floating over to the right of the text. I wonder what would happen. Let me go back. I remember that I added in some text align to the right here. If I take that out, and now look at it, looks a little different. Kind of weird. Okay. So it floats it to the right of the text. It floats it to the right of the page rather than the left. All right, well, let's go ahead and click finish. Actually, before we finish, I want to float it back to the left because I personally don't like, well, we'll leave it at the right because that's what this said to do, so we'll leave it there. But I'm not really fond of how it looks. The images weren't very well lined up. Now, this is a very, very important part of using images. We want our images. There's a lot of images that we can get from Creative Commons or somewhere else, and they're huge or they're way too big for what we want, or possibly even too small. They're not the right size for what we want to use them for. So this is a property that controls the width and the height of the, not just the images, but also the paragraphs as well. So right now our paragraphs are like really wide. They take up the whole web page, and we don't really want that. So change the widths of the images to be larger or smaller. So let's make our images maybe 200 instead of 250. Now you can see them get a little smaller there. And because we do not have a height, it has kept the same scale and just scaled it down. We have to be careful when we're using height as well. If I make it like 100 px, for example, it sort of stretches out my images and makes them look a little like wide there. Or I can do just the opposite and make them tall, and again, it kind of skews those images. So by having it automatically do it, it keeps the scale. If you don't put in height as auto, it will do that automatically. The web lab will predict that you're wanting to keep the scale. All right, so now we want to also change it in the P rule set, the paragraph rule set. So let's add in width here. And I want to keep that nice and lined up. So the width, let's make it, if that is 200, maybe we need our width of our paragraphs to be like 400 px. And you can see just from the preview that that's still, it's going to look different on different screens, but that's still a little bit too wide on, at least on this preview screen. If I make this bigger and it becomes full screen, though, you can see, depending on the size of the screen that the user is using, is going to really change the view of what 400 pixels looks like, because that's a defined width. So this screen that I'm looking at right now has a lot more width to it than the preview screen, which might be like a smartphone or a tablet or something like that, would look more like this. So again, right now we're just sort of playing around with it and playing around with the width of those paragraphs. Maybe those images, we might want to make them a little, whoa, maybe not that big, but a little bit bigger. And now we can see, They're going over weird. I think it's because they're hitting the image on top of it. So, and I think that's the problem we had before, is our height is a little too high, maybe around 300. Let's make that a little, yeah, see now they're all floating over. I bet if we had more space between these two, it would float over as well. So anyway, that kind of solved that mystery. And you could play around with that number a little bit more to make sure that they all line up and float all the way over. That last one is still not floating all the way to the right. So I'm going to change it down to 270. Let's try it. Oh, still not floating. Again, this is web developers spend a lot of time looking at how things render or how they preview on different size devices so that, if we're looking at it on a big screen, how is it going to look versus on a smaller screen? All right, let's go ahead and finish. We added the width to the property, which kept that from going all the way across the screen and gives it a defined width. Now we're going to go to Bubble 7. Bubble 7 has several different activities. Unless you're told otherwise, you should always try to do all of them because each one is going to teach you a little something different. And you can see 3 of them are about, really 5 of them are about debugging and fixing things. And then there's one that just has to do with adding some new things. So these images are all supposed to be 100 pixels high, but the height property is not working. Fix the bug and make the images all the same height. So right now they're not. They're all different sizes. When we go to the style and we look at the images, they're supposed to be 100 pixels high. And hopefully you can look here, and just by everything being so nicely organized, we can see that those units of pixels is not added in. Aha. As soon as I put the PX in there, it rendered as 100 pixels high. So boom. Most of these little debugs are pretty quick. You should be able to pop through these quickly. It looks like a lot of work on these kind of levels, but it's really not. But it is quickly getting you to see some mistakes that you don't want to make later, like forgetting to put PX on your width and your height. So this one, none of the styles are working for this page. My first thing that I thought, if none of the styles are working, is to check this this source here, style.css. Is that right? I feel like source is used with image, not with a link. And if we're like, hey, wait a minute, let's go back to the one that had, a working link like this one. And let's look at what that link, when everything is not working from your CSS, we want to check the link tag right here. And on that link tag, on the other one, it said source src here, not href. So we want to fix that. In fact, what I'm going to do is copy and then go back and paste it, since we know that that is a working one. That link tag can be awfully tricky. And it's really easy for one thing to not work. And so now you can see lots of styles working over here now. It looks beautiful. We've got origami paper folding website here. Looks gorgeous. Okay, href was the problem. We're going to finish that. Notice that The next one is debugging the heading. Find out what's wrong with the code, even though. So in this particular case, and in many cases, you guys have seen in my feedback, there's times where your preview looks fine, but I will tell you sometimes that, well, this is not done correctly, or, you haven't used proper syntax. So there's something not quite right with the heading. And I have seen this so many times. Um, a lot of students see the word or that link, the tag, the head tag, and they want to put their headings, like their titles, in the head tag, and that is not correct. So we want to actually cut that out. I used Control X for that. I'm going to go below the head tag. Below the body tag. All the content that we see on a page should be below the body tag. Now, it still looks the same in the preview, but the heading tag or the head tag that we see up here is actually for something that we call metadata. It's for things that are not showing up over here on the screen, like the link to the style sheet. Also, web developers use that to link in like keywords and stuff so their website can be found easier. If I wanted to link this to whatever spam musubi is, that is quite interesting. So that is all you're having to do here. It's not going to make any changes, visible changes on your preview, but it is an important change, an important thing to recognize on your web page. All headings, your titles and everything should start under the body tag. All right. And so the head tag contains information, like I just said, the metadata. It's not displayed on your web page, and content that you want on your actual page should not go here, as I just stated. The body is where your content goes, everything you want somebody to see. If you were working through this independently, hopefully those little helps would help you know what to do on that page. All right, adding new rules for the body of this page. It's not very exciting. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is one of those things you could kind of do a lot with. But it just says add some rules for the body. There's nothing here. So when we talk about the body tag, we talk about things like background color. Background color is really important. There we go. And probably if you don't do anything else, you should at least change the background color. You can also change things like your text align and maybe, oh, that was not what I meant. Inherit would be to take on, let's see. So on this, now you can see the words on the page are trying to be centered. Everything is aligned to the center. Unless it is told to align otherwise, like H6. All right, so I'm going to click Finish, and we have added some rules to the rule set for the body. We could add other things as well. We could add font family, we could add all kinds of stuff. All right, text size, but that's only if we really want all the text on that page to be the same size, which I personally would not. So the images are different sizes from each other. Some of them are way too big. Create a rule that makes the width all the same and sizes them down. So you can read a little more about that there. Defining the width will also change the height so that the image does not stretch unless you have also defined the height. So if you want to be safe, only change either the width or the height. Don't try to change both of them. And then a pixel is the size of a single point of light on the screen. So pixels are very small. Just saying. That's why we can make our pixels so large. All right. Oh my. Yes, our images are terribly big, so big that I can't even see what that is supposed to be an image of. Maybe looks like an Arctic fox. And there's some other things. So we want to define the width to be something that is suitable. I'm going to try to start off with 400 pixels. Let's see how this looks. You can see that immediately all of these images look so much better. Now the Pixabay licenses and stuff is no longer with the pictures. So if we want that, we might want to actually make our pictures a little larger. Maybe we'll try 600, I think is too big. You can also try making it smaller. And you can see every time I change the width, it's making them a different size. And really right now, I'm not worried about those licenses. We simply want to make the width of all the images the same and size them down, which I have done with 400px. That is not the only right answer. Anything that sizes them down is just fine. All right, getting almost finished. The last thing is to fix the image position so that they are next to the text. We want to move the images using the float property so that they are to the side of the text rather than below it. So we want the float property goes with the images. And it doesn't tell us to the left or to the right. I kind of like the left just because I feel like it's a natural place for it to go. But you can do it either way. So let's preview that. Again, it's partly because our images, if we reduce their size a little bit, make them like maybe a smaller 150, not 1050, 150, let's try that. Now they all sort of line up along the left. If you want there to actually be bigger pictures, what you would need to do is come in here and put in some line breaks to give it more space between the paragraphs so that we could make it all fit properly. So if I go back to my HTML, I can put in like breaks here. And now flowers, that word flowers is down below the image rather than before it was up there next to the Arctic fox. So you see how birds is. We could do the same thing, put a couple breaks in there before birds, and that would space it down so it can go below it. So that's how we do it. All right, I'm going to click finish because the main thing we wanted to learn from that is how to move the images using the float property. You could have also floated it to the right. That would have not been incorrect either. By the way, it's the float property. The float property is very convenient because it doesn't attach it to a certain spot on the screen. Like I said before, we use devices with lots of different screen sizes. Some people have giant gaming monitors that are huge, and other people you're using a device like a cell phone with a smart screen, and so it's just really much smaller handheld. And website developers are constantly trying to optimize what they're creating for mobile devices as well as full-size devices. So now that you've seen some different ways to style, we're going to try out. This is your assessment level. Here are the things you need to do, and I'm not going to do this for you, but I will read it with you. You're going to give the web page a background color. You're going to make all the images go to the right of the page and make all of the text a different color. That means your paragraphs and your headings. And then you can add any other styles that you want. When I go to grade it, this is exactly what I'm going to be looking for, that the background, the images, and the text have all been styled as described in the instructions. There are no syntax errors or extra code that does not function in the style sheet. If it has some errors or things like that, non-functioning code, then that would, but you've done everything, might knock you down a little bit, but you should always look for what the extensive evidence is asking you to do, because that's how you will be graded and that's how you get full credit. If you do not put any rule sets in the style sheet, you try to do things just in the HTML, then you're not going to be showing me that you have any evidence of understanding from the styling. So in that case, I would make sure you go back, and if all you've done is watch this video, go back and work through the levels on your own so that you know how to do this before you try to do the assessment. Bubble 9 is challenges. Nobody is required to do the challenges. However, there's some really cool things in these challenges for this lesson, such as creating borders, rounding corners, and providing margins around the elements in your page. So very cool. You can give your background, you can actually use background images, and so that's pretty cool. The last two challenges are like actually building a web page, so that is not necessary unless, again, you're working ahead and you're just having a good time and you want to do it. Go right ahead with that. So I'm going to finish this and I'm going to wrap up this video. Again, your assignment for lesson 11 is to submit a screenshot from Bubble 8 once you have finished it. Now, I will not be able to necessarily see everything that you've done from your screenshot, so I will still go into code.org to grade it, but it lets me know that when you submit that screenshot that your work is ready for me to grade. Have a wonderful day, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.